So first I wanted to say congratulations on 30 years of Scrum. Looking at the webinar, for me, I was reminded that for me personally, it's like changed my life. I think you shared a story, or maybe JJ shared a story where people's lives had been changed with Scrum, and I had a similar experience. Before I joined Scrum Inc., I was on a team that wasn't able to deliver software, and we went through a transformation where we converted our old system to microservices and we implemented Scrum. And I went from like being assigned work to collaborating with the team on the work to be done and managing the burn down chart to meet a deadline that was dependent on external circumstances. And I just remember growing so much in that time. I was empowered to make decisions and I was forced to grow, and I really felt the power of a team. And with like this experience, I was inspired to work with Scrum Inc. And I think a lot of people that we work with here in Japan, like we're really excited to be able to like transfer this knowledge. And we're excited to be celebrating 30 years of Scrum with you. So I have some questions from the audience here in Tokyo, and I would like to interview you if it's okay.
That's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, so first question I have is, you mentioned that the secret sauce of Scrum is like the meta awareness of the team system. What can the Scrum Master do to improve the meta awareness of the system?
There's two aspects of that. One is there's an effect called the zygote effect, which is the human mind tends to remember things that are not done and then tries to close them, tries to get them to done. And you can't help yourself. It's built into the brain through evolution. So one thing the Scrum Master has to do is make things highly visible. What have we completed? What have we not completed? What do we need to do? So the whole daily meeting starts with trying to get that clear. If you do that well, then you get free energy of the team. It's one of the things that move the first team to the high productive state. Mm-hmm. The second aspect of that is when you come to what do we want to do, the team looked at the whole system. We were building a tool for modeling the system, so we could see a model of the entire system. And we looked at that as a evolving biological entity and said, okay, if we want to evolve a new feature, today, where would we touch that system in order to produce the biggest effect with the least amount of work? This is one of the ways you get twice the work in half the time. You do some small thing in a part of the system that causes a ripple effect across the whole system that moves the system towards where you want it to go. And if you do this well, then the architecture will emerge, which is one of the principles of the Agile Manifesto. The architecture will emerge, and the new feature that comes out will come out 10 times as fast, and it will come out 10 times better because the architecture will be flexible and adaptive. The typical way that people build systems is they say, okay, we got this system, we can't change it. We're going to build a new feature on top of this system, like a Band-Aid. But that new feature never works quite right because other parts of the system need to change to make the new feature work really well.
Yes.
So you not only get it faster, you not only get it better, but for the end user, it's much more easy and satisfying to use the system.
This makes me think in the webinar, you mentioned teams operating at the edge of chaos, evolve faster. And I'm curious, like, what can the Scrum Master do to create this environment of freedom? And I think that involves having to embrace uncertainty with which Japanese people, I think in general, are less willing to be open to. Like, people don't really like uncertainty here. So what
Right.
can the Scrum Master do to create this sort of environment?
That is a problem in many cultures. People want certainty, they want hierarchy, they want to tell people what to do.
Mhm.
The problem is that's not the way the universe works. One of the fundamental research papers that actually started Scrum came out of Los Alamos Laboratories by a guy named Christopher Langdon. And he was simulating artificial life on the computer. So simulating evolution on the computer. And what he found was if you increase the degrees of freedom of the system would evolve faster. And so what you need to do to get fast evolution is to move the system as close as possible to the edge of chaos, because if it has too much freedom, it goes over into random behavior. Okay. So what the Japanese need to understand, and this is a topic that Professor Nanaka and I talk about every time we meet, is the Japanese problem is innovation. Professor Nanaka has said more than a decade to me, Japan is not innovating fast enough. They're not evolving systems quickly enough. They're not getting new product out fast enough. And to innovate, you have to move towards the edge of chaos so that you get faster evolution of the product. So until the Japanese understand this, they will always be handicapped. So the first thing that needs to happen is the mindset needs to change. We need to see that the speed of innovation is the primary metric of success in today's world, particularly for technology products. And if the fast pace of innovation is going to happen, you're going to have autonomous teams. So the first thing the Scrum Master needs to do is get the management to understand this. If they don't understand and they don't help, it will make things extremely difficult for the Scrum Master.
Yeah, I think I can relate. Having worked with many Japanese companies, I think that is something that a lot of Scrum Masters struggle with.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I want the Japanese people to understand this is not me saying this.
Right.
This is Professor Nanaka constantly saying we have to innovate faster in Japan. The future of Japan depends on faster innovation. So the management needs to get that. Now, then when the Scrum Master is on the team, the Scrum Master, it's a paradox because the Scrum Master needs to set up the environment and provide coaching to get the team moving. But you want to do it in a way that you never tell the team what to do. You show them how we're going to do it. The framework is how we're going to do it. But what should we do next? So this gets back to the punctuated equilibrium, understanding the meta part of the system. What we should do next, every member of the team has to speak to what's done next by understanding the whole system as much as they can. And when everybody's spoken about that, then the team as a whole needs to decide what the next most important thing is.
Mhm.
So the Scrum Master's job is to facilitate that
Mhm.
and not be directive on what to do, not telling people what to do,
Mhm.
but actually creating a framework where the people have to do that meta-analysis. Everyone has to talk. All together, they have to decide and get that moving.
Mhm. Yeah. So Scrum is relatively still new in Japan, I would say, even though it has roots in Japan. Can you talk a little bit about like some of your early experience? I think Scrum in Japan specifically, it's been around for about 4 years. So I'm curious if you recall your early days when Scrum,
Yes.
yeah, and talk about any
Okay,
good
so
experiences.
in the early days, the management and the investors would tell me that this was a crazy idea. It would
Mm,
never work.
mm,
But of course, I knew as a innovator,
mhm,
I had spent years. I had about $30 million from the National Institutes of Health to do cancer research.
mhm,
And I had done massive supercomputing simulating the human cell. And to do that, the technology that I used, I got from Bell Labs. So I worked with the leading teams at Bell Labs, the people that invented Unix, the people that invented the C language.
mhm,
And I learned how their teams worked.
mhm,
And I realized, okay, these are small teams, self-organizing teams, cross-functional teams. So then when I went into industry and I saw that I went into a large bank, I saw all the projects were late. And
mhm,
these were huge projects. And I went to the CEO of the bank and I said, have you noticed all your projects are late? And he said, yes, we're running 150 banks and every day, 5 banks go up. And the CEOs scream at me. And I said, well, it's not getting any better. Every time we're late, the managers have more reports and more meetings, and it's going to get later. So he said, what should we do? So I said, we need to start small. This was the first prototype of Scrum at scale. We need to start with one business unit with everyone, sales, marketing, support. And we need to build small, autonomous, cross-functional teams, just like they do at Bell Labs. Now, because I worked with the leading research institute in the world at the time,
mhm,
and those teams had Nobel Prize winners on them,
mhm.
I knew they were right and the managers were wrong. And no matter what the management said to me, I said, I've worked with people a lot smarter than you. They know how to do it.
Mhm,
So that was enough to get them to let me do a little experiment.
mhm, mhm,
I would say, let me try an experiment with a small set of teams,
mhm,
and then you can see if it works.
mhm,
And that first set of teams, that business unit was the worst business unit in the bank. It had negative minus 30% margins. It was losing millions of dollars almost every month. Within 6 months, it had positive 30% margins, which was the highest, most profitable unit in the bank. So the CEO said, wow, you just took Bell Labs teams, small cross-functional autonomous teams, and you turned the worst piece of the bank into the most profitable piece of the bank, and it only took 6 months.
mhm,
Maybe this might work.
mhm,
That's how it starts in the beginning.
mhm.
No one thinks it's going to work. And that's your problem in Japan. Okay. The managers have a completely different training background. They haven't seen it. So you're going to have to do an experiment and you're going to need to show them ideally a dramatic effect quickly.
Mhm.
So you're going to need really good scrum masters and really good coaching to make that happen.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Looking back on the last 30 years, is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, the whole thing about Scrum is inspecting and adapting.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So anytime anything went wrong, we did something different.
Okay. Okay. Good
So
answer.
how many times did things go wrong? Thousands of times.
Yeah.
We made a mistake. And thousands of times we corrected it.
Mm.
So this gets back to a fundamental principle. We're updating the Scrum book, Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. And we wanted to put in new material. What have we learned in the last 10 years since the book was written?
Very cool.
So I started writing papers
Mm.
to create a second book. It's called First Principles in Scrum. So I said, let's go back to first principles.
Mm.
Now, I am trained as a radiation physicist. Actually, I'm not trained as a software person. I'm not trained as a methodology person. I am a professor of radiology.
Mm.
I understand nuclear medicine and radiological imaging, and I understand the process of using radiation to kill a tumor.
Mm.
So I went back to my training in physics and I said, what is new in physics? Because everything arises out of physics. And what I found was in the last 10 years, a very famous technologist in the United States named Wolfram, he built a product called Mathematica, which is the leading simulation software for mathematicians and physicists.
Mm.
He is a theoretical physicist, and he has been working on what he calls the physics project. Can we simulate the universe? Now, what he's found through the simulation is that, first of all, we already know this. We knew this in Scrum, that from very simple rules, you get very complex behavior.
Mhm.
All the original artificial life papers that Scrum is based on showed that.
Mm.
So you can see that in computing, right? Everything in computing is ones and zeros.
Mhm.
Everything we're doing is nothing but ones and zeros.
Mm.
So if you look at the universe, what are the actual minimum set of things that you need to create the universe? Now let's take those minimum things. How do we model a universe? So Wolfram models a network of nodes.
Mm.
That is what's happening. And then how does time work? Well, those nodes transform from one piece to another. That's through time, right? So things are transforming through time. So that's the way projects work. You start with a network of things that are going on, and then over time, that network transforms and moves into different configurations. And the amazing thing that Wolfram found out is that you cannot compute when something is going to be done. It's not computable.
Mm.
The transformations of the network are so complex.
Mm.
The biggest computer in the world can never figure out what's going to happen.
Mm.
This is the basis of Agile and Scrum. So your Japanese management, they think they know what is going to happen.
Mm. Right.
They are going directly against the
Mm.
fundamental way the universe operates.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's why they will constantly fail. And that is why innovation is so slow in Japan.
Mhm.
They're not aligned with the fundamental physics of the way things work. And so it all comes back again to the mind. Until they change their mindset to align their thinking with the latest research in physics, they will never get a project done well. They will never innovate as fast as they need to innovate. They need to change the way they think about the world.
We have a lot of work to do here.
Well, they need coaching. They need coaching,
yes,
and training. That's what Scrum Maker is about, right? So you have lots of opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And which is really exciting for us and something that we care deeply about. So yeah, lots of really exciting opportunities for sure. Your conversation made me think the Scrum values are often overlooked. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the values and having a values-driven organization, and maybe a little bit of history of how the values came to be and how this might be important for Japanese companies?
Yes. Okay, so a set of the Agile Manifesto is a set of values. So these are very useful to guide people's behavior, because it's easy to see when people are acting in a way that's not in line with the values. Okay. Now, in the case of Scrum, the first value is openness. Why do we need to be open? Well, we need to see the whole system. That's what we were talking about. The meta-analysis of the system can only be done by everyone seeing everything. And also by everybody, and we can only figure out what to do by everybody sharing what they really think. If they don't, we will not know what to do, and we will do something that is not the right thing, and that will block innovation. So openness is fundamentally critical. Everyone needs to speak. Everyone needs to have an idea. And then all together, we pull the best ideas forward and implement. Now, the challenge is you can't have openness if people are afraid to talk. So the only way to make people, to help people be open, is have respect for people, which is one of the two pillars of the Toyota way. And the Japanese are really good at this, actually, much better than the Americans. They have a lot more respect for people. So you really need to listen to people. You need to take their ideas. You need to treat them with dignity. Otherwise, you will not be open. Now, in order for all of this to work, it takes courage. It takes courage to be open and really share what you think. But it also takes courage to try something new, because things that are new often don't work. But we have to go back. Let's go back to the fundamental principles of the Toyota way that Taiichi Ono taught us. I remember I was in Europe working with Toyota, and I was trying to tell the Japanese management in Europe that you need to do it this way. And they said, well, we don't want to do it that way. And I said, well, here is what Taiichi Ono said. He said, do this. I said, if Taiichi Ono was here right now, what would he think about your management? And the Japanese manager said he would be outraged because we are not acting in the way that Taiichi Ono set up the Toyota way at Toyota. And what is the thing that Taiichi Ono says in the first chapter on his book on workflow management? He says, every time I try to do something in Japan, they tell me, we tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work. Then I say, we're going to do it anyway, and it works half of the time. So he said, what I have figured out is half of what people think is wrong. And as a manager, a project leader, or a scrum master, you need to come to work every day trying to figure out which half of what you think is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, if you confess to the team that you were wrong and we should do something different, they will follow you because they will trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the kind of courage
Mm-hmm.
that the teams, and particularly the Japanese management, needs to have. The courage, Taiichi Ono.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the Japanese management in Europe, I said, how come I'm speaking for Taiichi Ono in this meeting? Why is it I'm the only one?
Mm-hmm.
People have called me the Taiichi Ono of Scrum. The Japanese should listen.
Mm-hmm.
They should listen to Taiichi Ono, not to me. And they should realize half of what they think is wrong. They're going to have to try something new, and they're going to fail and have to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
But with Scrum, we set it up so it's just a short window of failure.
That's true.
You get to inspect and adapt quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So courage is central. Now, once you have openness, respect, and courage, then everyone can see what's going on, and all together they can decide on what to do, and that brings about a focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that is incredibly important for building product innovation, because it is very hard to transform something into a new product. And unless you have extreme focus, it's very hard to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once everybody is aligned, really focused, then commitment to action becomes possible. And as soon as you commit altogether, it actually changes the dynamic of a system,
Mm-hmm.
so that everything, the universe starts to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as, just think about it, as soon as the company knows that this team is building this new product, that they're totally committed, and this is the thing that needs to happen, and this is the help that they want,
Mm-hmm.
the whole company will start to help the team that is really focused, really energized, really committed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the money goes. That's where the attention goes. That's where the help goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get lifted up by the people.
Mm-hmm.
They carry you forward. The whole organization will carry you forward.
Mm-hmm.
So where did those values come from? They came from a company called Patient Keeper. I was CTO of Patient Keeper for 8 years. And we implemented Scrum, and Ken was in there as a consultant. And Patient Keeper had the fastest set of teams I've ever seen. They were faster than Google.
Mm-hmm.
They could install a completely new hospital system 4 times a sprint. They could bring up the 4 biggest hospitals in the United States.
Wow.
In 1 sprint. Unbelievable. And Ken said, how is it possible that we have this incredible system of production?
Mm-hmm.
And he decided it must be the environment. And he wrote it down in a chapter in the first book on Scrum. We call it the Black Book because it had a black cover. And in that chapter, he describes these values. They weren't originally in the Scrum Guide, but over the years, people say you need to put the values in the Scrum Guide. And so we did. So openness, respect, courage, focus, and commitment. So openness to change and the courage to do it. That's where the innovation comes from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the Scrum Guide. Do you have any plans to update the Scrum at Scale Guide anytime soon?
We made really significant changes in 2020. And typically over time, people start putting pressure on Ken and I to incorporate more things. We're not feeling that pressure yet. It seems like worldwide, people are still absorbing the changes. We got much more team focused. We got it much simpler down to basics. And we made it not a software team. It's not about software anymore. It's about any team that has any kind of goal for any kind of product and service. So we're finding that people are just trying to absorb that. And we also did two major changes. The first one was on servant leadership. Scrum Masters thought servant leadership means I never tell anybody what to do. I just take notes. No. Servant leadership, if you read the book Good to Great, Colin says the only thing that distinguishes a great CEO from a good CEO is servant leadership. And what they do is their job is to have a vision and a direction and then get the right people on the bus and then ask the people on the bus to figure out how to get there. That's servant leadership, right? But everybody forgets that CEO, if he has the wrong person on the bus, he gets the wrong person off the bus. So a Scrum Master cannot have someone on the team that is blocking innovation.
That makes a lot of sense. I also really enjoyed that book as well. Really great book. Do you have any plans to update the Scrum at Scale Guide?
The Scrum at Scale Guide is constantly being updated. It's in GitHub.
Okay.
And anyone can submit a change to GitHub. It will be reviewed. So the Scrum Guide is getting updated every day.
Okay.
People don't realize that. So Scrum Guide is actually on a modern development cycle where anyone can submit a change at any time. And they're reviewed typically the day that they're submitted.
Wow.
And within a sprint cycle, they'll be incorporated. So the answer to the question to whoever's asking this is, what change are you going to submit to the Scrum at Scale Guide tomorrow? That's how it changes.
You sound so sharp. I'm curious, what books are you reading right now? Last question.
Okay, it's not about books.
Oh, okay.
I want to show you my watch.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't get you a really good picture. I'll have to send you a picture later.
Okay. Wow.
But on this watch, it's a Garmin watch. Garmin acquired a company in Finland called firstbeat.com, and they train Olympic athletes. So on this watch, Garmin has a dozen different sensors to sense all the healthcare parameters And then it uses the first beat analytics to tell you in real time what is your body energy and what is your level of stress.
Mhm.
Now, I'm spending full time with a healthcare startup right now, a Scrum healthcare startup. And I've been asked to create a Scrum framework for healthcare to make it so simple that any person can pick it up and start it in 2 days, just like Scrum. And what we found is that the two most important things, everything depends on your level of energy and your level of stress, because if you're stressed, the energy goes down. So the whole goal of what we call the TESH framework is to double your energy and cut your stress in half. Because what we find is that if your energy stays really high and your stress really low, it's really easy to get twice the work in half the time done. It's not only, it's fun because you get into a flow state. And to get that energy high and the stress low, you have to work on everything: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And what I've been talking to with the Agile coaches yesterday on LinkedIn is, in order to bring about change, you as an Agile coach, Scrum Master, product owner, or Agile manager, you need energy. You need sustainable energy, energy sustained over time. Force over time is power. So your personal power, and I was training students in the MBA program at MIT this week on this, your personal power as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, as an MBA graduate is dependent on energy divided by stress. And if you get your energy twice as high and your stress twice as low, you will be able to get twice as much done in half the time. That means you can work half as much as your classmates, and your grades are going to be twice as good. Now, once you do that, what tends to happen is, hey, I'm only working half as hard and I'm getting better grades. You start thinking, well, why don't I work just as much as everybody else? And instead of my grades being 4 times better, they could be 8 times better. Once you start doing that, then you start opening up to possibilities. The power that I have now could be used to build a really transformative company. And you might wind up like Elon Musk, who says, I'm not just going to work a normal work week. I'm going to work 80 hours a week. I'm going to change the planet. And he built a company now that is worth 4 times Toyota. That company builds cars that have any hardware and software changes a week on the assembly line. So the car is changing every single day. And their cars now are the #1 selling cars ahead of the Toyota Corolla. Okay, so Japan, wake up.
I think that's the message we all needed. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I can totally relate to you about like the importance of well-being. And I recently started yoga and I've been really into it. And just like the space it creates inside you allows for you to be able to focus more on like what's really important. And yeah, I think it's really important for people to just generally be happier and to make the world a better place.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, totally. Very, very relatable. And I'll definitely have to Google the watch that you have. Yeah, very cool. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's early in the morning for you, so we really appreciate it.
Glad to do it. Always glad to help out any way I can.
Thank you.